So I was scrolling through YouTube and I was very happy to find a video from Chris Hedges.
Welcome to the Chris Hedges Report. The CIA, from its inception, carried out assassinations, coups, torture, and illegal spying and abuse, including of U.S. citizens, many of which were exposed in 1975 by the Church Committee in the Senate and the Pike Committee in the House.
Chris Hedges for years had been on RT America doing his show On Contact, an interview show where he would interview politicians, he would interview academics, scholars, etc., about a whole host of subjects. And it was a great loss when RT America was shut down and Chris Hedges was purged from yet another place on the internet where you could find it. But scrolling through the YouTube, I found a new interview where Chris Hedges is interviewing John Kiriakou of the CIA. There's this important part of the interview where John Kiriakou is kind of describing how the CIA at this point completely and utterly is an entity upon themselves. They're a rogue state. They operate outside of the purview of the law, outside of the purview of Congress, outside of the purview of the executive branch. They basically do whatever they want.
You're right about oversight. Oversight was a very serious thing beginning in 1975, and it was certainly serious through the Reagan administration into the end of the 1980s. There were members of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence and the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence that took their oversight duties very, very seriously. And that began to weaken in the 90s. And then it changed utterly when the 9/11 attacks took place. Now we've got these oversight committees that really act as little more than cheerleaders for the CIA. You know, it's up to these members of Congress to tell the CIA, no, you can't do that. No, you can't have a torture program or an illegal rendition program or an archipelago of secret prisons around the world. You can't transform yourself without congressional approval into a paramilitary organization. You can't set up an assassination squad that travels around the world to just carry out hits of people whose politics you don't like. And we just don't get that kind of oversight anymore. You know, before 9/11, the whole purpose of operations was to gather intelligence. You implemented an operation because it was going to provide you with a new line of information, because the job of a CIA officer is to recruit spies to steal secrets. And then you pass those secrets to the analysts so that they can provide the best possible analysis to the policymakers to make the best possible policy. In a perfect world, that's why the CIA exists. But that changed after 9/11. So you've got a handful of analysts now whose job it is to recruit spies to steal secrets to influence policy. And then most of the Directorate of Operations to do counterterrorism, counter narcotics, counter proliferation, to go out there, you know, shooting people up or snatching people off the streets to render them to third countries. It's just a completely different place. You mentioned in your intro that the CIA is now a paramilitary organization. I've been making that complaint for many, many years. I set up a series of briefings, and one of the briefings for them was on Al Qaeda. It was supposed to be conducted by a junior analyst, and much to my shock, into the briefing walks Cofer Black, later Ambassador Cofer Black, the director of the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, and a woman we used to call the red-headed devil. I ought not to say her name, but she was the chief of operations in the Osama bin Laden group. And I said, "Oh, welcome." I was so surprised. I said to these Middle Easterners, "Gentlemen, this is Cofer Black. He's the director of the Counterterrorism Center." And Cofer sat down and cut right to the chase. And he said, "Something terrible is going to happen. We don't know when, we don't know where, but we know it's going to be huge. We're picking up chatter where Al Qaeda's camp commanders are on the phone with their students and they're crying and saying, 'I'll see you in paradise.' We're hearing code words for a major attack. There's going to be a great soccer match. There's going to be a huge wedding. The honey salesman is coming with vast quantities of honey. These are all codes for a major attack. And he said, I beg you, if you have any sources inside Al Qaeda, please help us. So afterwards, at the end of the day, I sent these guys back to their hotel before the dinner, and I went to Kofer's office to thank him for taking the time. And I said, Kofer, I've got to ask you, because I wasn't working on Al Qaeda at the time. I said, was that for their benefit or were you serious? And he said, oh, no, I was serious. He said, we don't have any sources inside Al Qaeda, and we know that something terrible is coming.
I covered the war in Kosovo and made the first trip with members of the Kosovo Liberation Army, and then met with Wes Clark afterwards, who was the head of NATO, and he was asking me what kind of weapons they had and how many there were. And he slammed his hand down on the desk and he said, Langley doesn't have anybody on the ground.
Nope. Nope. That's quite common. And they rely far, far too much on electronic eavesdropping. You know, you can't have NSA do all of your work for you. That's not a full complement of intelligence. I feel very strongly that we do not need a CIA. I think that if we ever did need a CIA, it's long overstayed its welcome. And you look at redundancy in intelligence around the U.S. government too, Chris. You've got the State Department's Bureau of Intelligence and Research, which does all kinds of intelligence analysis. You've got the Defense Department's DHS, Defense Human Services. They recruit spies to steal secrets just like the CIA does. You have NSA doing all of the electronic eavesdropping. You have DARPA developing the next generation of whatever it is that they do. It's so secret, we don't even know what it is that they're working on. We've got think tanks, most of which are funded and financed by the big defense contractors. We don't need a CIA. And to tell you the truth, there's a major book waiting to be written on the CIA's analytic failures. You know, we talk all the time about the CIA's operational failures. Those are very well documented. Legacy of Ashes is one of the best books I've ever read. But what we don't talk about is the CIA's analytic failures. And if you go back really to the founding of the CIA in 1947, they've either missed or gotten the analysis wrong on every major event. I mean, we can go back to the Suez Crisis. We can go back to the Berlin airlift, through the Iraq War and everything that came after it. They're wrong about everything. And there's never a price to pay for that. They just move on to the next crisis and then get that wrong.
So the biggest takeaways from this interview are, number one, Kiriakou saying we really don't need a CIA anymore. And if we ever did, it's long past its term of usefulness. And I'm also very interested in the fact that he's explaining time and time again how the CIA is basically useless. They're completely relying on, there's no more intelligence gathering when it comes to them. They're completely relying upon the NSA's electronic works. They have almost no assets infiltrating foreign adversaries. They have no human contacts, right? And essentially they've just given up on intelligence. They're just doing executions. He's talking about how the recruitment process has gone from recruiting people with high degrees and the ability to speak multiple languages to recruiting, former special operations operators. They're looking for Green Berets, Navy SEALs. That's who they're looking for. Triggermen. They're no longer looking for people to evaluate and understand and comprehend. They're looking for people who will pull a trigger and then go to the next place and pull a trigger and go to the next place and pull a trigger and go to the next place and pull a trigger and never question why they're doing it. Overall, I find myself agreeing with Chris and John. We don't need a CIA. This is an organization that has failed to protect us from every major event. This is an organization that was full of Nazis post World War II and Operation Paperclip. This is an organization that, excuse me, this is an organization that has sold drugs to our citizens, has murdered our own citizens, has done all kinds of nefarious shit, quite possibly even killing the United States President JFK. I mean, that's what I believe. Anyway, the CIA is a rogue state, and we don't need it. We really don't need it. And I'm not depressed if I wind up dead after this video.